Welcome to part 1 of Excel Refresher Training. My name is Jason Ryan. I work for the Hanscom Cost Staff. And we're going to walk through a workbook that has some of the more common capabilities and functions an FM acquisition person may use. This worksheet can be found on the FCC SharePoint site. So for those of you that are onboarding with us, I'd like to welcome you to FM. Other intermediate users, hopefully this workbook can be used for some renewed guidance. Let's jump into our first topic, common hotkeys. So this workbook is set up where each tab is its own topic. And there is a blue box on each one that explains the functionality and provides direction on what you need to do on the sheet. So before we get into hotkeys, the top ribbon with all these tabs, home, insert, page layout, formulas, etc. This is where you can find pretty much all the capabilities and functions in Excel. So for example, if you knew you wanted a financial type of formula, you're not really sure what you're looking for, you can come here to the Formulas tab under Financial, hit the arrow, and you can scroll through and you can navigate all the existing functions. And once you select one, quick blurb pulls up and tells you all about it. But for the most part, we're going to right-click on the worksheet. A couple of quick menus come up for formatting, cut, copy, paste, format cells, etc. And we're going to use hotkeys. So we want to navigate as fast and as efficiently as we can. So I tend to gravitate towards the quick menus and the hotkeys. The first one we're going to talk about is copy and paste, first two. Control C is copy, Control V would be paste. So I highlighted the data set. I'm going to copy it, Control C. Go to cell C1, I'm going to hit Control V, and it's going to put a copy of the highlighted data into column C. Cutting is similar. Highlight your data set. To cut, you hit Control X. And now when I hit Control V to paste it, it's going to paste the data into column C. But we cut it. We didn't copy it, so it cuts it out of where it originated from. And you might notice, well, there are a couple steps there that I didn't really step through. So I was using Control Z and Control Y to undo and redo selections. So undo is Control Z. Let's hit that once. And we can see that our last action was canceled. If you hit Control Y, it will redo that last action. So it's a pretty good visual way to see what effects you're having on your worksheet. And then the last hotkey is selecting the data set. Select all. So you could manually with the mouse hold the left mouse button and drag it down and highlight the whole data set. For large data sets, for me that takes way too much time. I like to just click into the data set and you hit Control A. And it highlights everything that's adjacent to that data set. So just to highlight further, if I were to take away column C, I'm just going to right click on the column, hit delete. I now have data adjacent to the cells that I was working with. So now when I hit Control A anywhere in the data set, it'll highlight the whole section with the group of cells that have data in it. And one final thing that will help out for the workbook is some formulas and sections have multiple levels to it, meaning once you write the formula for one row, you need to copy the formula down to take that analysis and apply it to multiple areas of the data. So a quick way to do that, we're going to click into cell F24, and if you notice there's already a formula there. We type in equals to type in any type of formula, and to copy it down I could do a couple things. I could copy it using Control C. I could cut it out of there and remove it and put it in the row below it. Or, which is much faster, I can highlight the bottom right of the cell. You'll notice the cursor goes from a white plus to a black plus, and double click. And that will copy the formula down to as many rows that have adjacent similar types of data. So this will help out with the functions that we'll talk about a little bit later in the workbook. Okay, our next topic is quick navigation. So there's a bunch of different ways to move around your data set. And we have a really large one here just to show the speed and efficiency in which we can use our hotkeys. So if I wanted to scroll down, I could use the regular Microsoft scroll bars, and you have to sit and wait forever to get to the bottom of large data sets. So one thing we can do is hit Control and the arrow keys to bomb around the data set. So Control down will take me from cell A1 to the very bottom of the data set. We're on cell A8614. Now all the direction arrow keys can be used. So I'm going to hold Control and hit right. It'll take me to the right side of the data set. Up brings me back up to row 1. Left. And you can see we can quickly move around. Now if we were to go beyond the data set, it'll bring us to the edge of the workbook. So you can see the outermost capabilities of the Excel spreadsheet. So I hit Control and right arrow key. I'm going to hit it one more time, and it takes me to column XFD, which is something like 10,600 columns to the right. Now I can either hit Control down from here to go all the way to the bottom, or return back to my data set, hit it a couple times to get down to the data set and then to the bottom. You can see row 1,048,576. So you can see the size and the capability of Excel there. To return back to the cell I was just in, which was, I believe I was in cell A1, I can either hit Control Home and head back down, or I can hit Control Up twice to get up there, or I can go to the name box and just type in A1. You can see I'm highlighted on the last row in column A already. So I hit Control Home to come back. Now holding Control page down or page up can navigate between all the tabs. So we're highlighted on quick navigation. I'm going to hit Control Up and it'll take me to the tabs to the left. Control Down brings me to the tabs to the right. A much faster way to navigate a worksheet that has a lot of tabs is to pull up the tab menu. And so you bring your cursor to the bottom left in between the right and left arrows, and these arrows just go and they move the tab scroll bar left and right. But if you right click in between them, it pulls up all the tabs you have in your workbook. So say we wanted to go to conditional formatting, we can double click and it brings us right there. Say we want to go back to quick navigation, rather than clicking the tabs to the left, we can just right click, go up to the top of the list, and come back to quick navigation. One last thing for moving around into a worksheet. Let's come up to our name box here, and you can type in the cell reference you actually want to go to. So for example, let's say we wanted to go to cell J5000. Type it in the name box, hit enter, and it brings us right there. Control Home takes us back to the beginning, and you can move around at your own leisure. But it can save a ton of time using these hotkeys for navigation rather than manually scrolling through. Next topic is resizing the worksheet. So if you wanted to resize a column, you could just click onto the column and then put the cursor in between column A and B. It'll turn into a four-way. Double click, and it resizes column A. I should say it right sizes it to the data that's in the column. So whichever row or whichever cell in this column has the longest amount of data, it'll right size to that. The same thing goes for the rows. Highlight row 3. I'm going to double click. It'll right size it back to the correct height. A quick way to do the entire worksheet is to put the cursor above row 1 to the left of column A. It'll highlight the entire sheet. If I want to right size all the columns, I just click anywhere in between two columns and it will right size all of them. The Same thing can be done for the rows. I'm just trying to squish down the rows here. Highlight the whole sheet. Double click in between any two rows. All of them are right sized. So you can do the rows and the columns. It looks like I squished the directions there. All right. This is incredibly useful when you're putting together charts for presentations, for leadership, right sizing them so that they show up appropriately. Our next topic is the format painter. This copies the format from one cell to other cells. So in this example, we're going to highlight our data set in column A, Control A, and we're going to hit the format painter either up on the Home tab, or we can right click, and on this quick menu the format painter is also there. So we'll click it once, we'll click into the second data set, and then you can see it copies the formatting. Now if I were to do that and I clicked on the whole column, it should duplicate all the way down. So not only does it format the first 24 rows, but it'll also keep going and keep copying the formatting all the way to the bottom. So you just want to make sure that you're copying your formatting to the intended spot. If we were to highlight column A, then hit the format painter, it'll appropriately take the entire column of the format and apply it to the next column. So I'm going to highlight column A. And the last thing here is we're going to double click Format Painter. And now you can take your formatting and you can continuously copy and keep going for all the columns. This can be a huge time saver for formatting very large data sets. Our next topic is manual break, which is Alt and Enter. So the idea here is that while we're writing text in a cell, instead of hitting the Enter key, which will just return us to the next cell, let's say we wanted to add more data into that cell, just on a new right-sized row. So what you do is you double-click into the cell, the cursor will be at the end of the data set, and then you hit Alt and Enter, and it will return you to the next line to enter more information. Real quick, a hotkey to get you into the cell, to get the cursor in there. You can highlight up here in the formula bar, but what I like to do is highlight the cell and then hit F2. Put your cursor right at the end of the data set. Now once you're here, you can hit the Home button, and it brings you to the beginning of the string. So I always think of F2 and then Home. So you can practice writing name and address, or let's say you're building a WBS dictionary and you want to define parts of each element. This is extremely helpful, so you can right size your cells and you don't have to format it later on. So it can save a ton of time. So hit Enter, Alt and Enter, does a manual break. Alt Enter again. And then Enter without holding Alt. If you're done, brings you to your next cell. So our next topic is removing duplicates. This can be incredibly useful when you're creating summaries of data in your workbooks. So here I pulled together a listing of 3 letters, and what we want to do is create a summary. So what we can do is take this entire data set and highlight it, hit Control A, and we can remove all the duplicates so there's only a copy of one of each. So you come up to the top Data tab once you're highlighted, and under Data Tools there is Remove Duplicates. So we'll click on here. It automatically highlights your column. We're just going to hit OK. And then Excel will tell you how many duplicates it found, how many unique values remain. So we have 12 3-letters in our entire list. So I'm going to go and hit Control Home to return back to the beginning. And now I've got a nice summarized version of the 3 letters that I can use for a summary. Our next topic is transposing. So basically, transpose takes data from how it's displaying, either horizontal or vertical, and transposing it means it will paste it and it will put it in the opposite way. So this can be useful for labeling. So we're going to highlight row 1, we're going to copy, and we need to go to paste special. So we can either come to the home tab, hit the arrow drop down for paste, go down to paste special, or we can also get there by right clicking right on the cell. And paste special is right here. So I'm going to move down to paste special. And there's a bunch of different options here we're going to talk about in a couple tabs, but we're basically just going to paste all and hit transpose. It's going to take our horizontal data, it's going to paste it vertically. And we can highlight the one we just did, right click, paste special, transpose. Now we can take our vertical data, put it back horizontally. Freezing panes is exceptionally good for visual analysis, and basically you click anywhere in your data set. Typically I'll go right up to the top row because that's usually what I'm freezing, so that you can scroll down and see which data set you're in, which column you're looking at. But there's a couple options where you can be selected anywhere. So we're just going to go anywhere randomly in the data set. We're going to hit view. We're going to go to freeze panes under window, and we're just going to freeze the top row. I'm going to start here with the quick freeze actions because those are the ones that are most likely to be used. So now we've frozen the top row, and as we scroll through, the top row remains, and as we come down, we can see what the column headings are. So let's return to the top, Control Home. I'm going to go back to Freeze Panes up in the View tab, and I'm going to hit Unfreeze Panes, and that just puts you back to a default worksheet. Click anywhere out in your data set. You can freeze first column, so you can keep everyone's names there. As you scroll to the right, column 1 remains. Column A, I should say. So you can do a manual freeze panes. You want to make sure that you're selected specifically which cell you want to be on, meaning everything above and to the left of the cell you're selected on will be frozen. So I'm going to select B2 so that the first row and the first column are frozen. Well, first I'm going to unfreeze the panes we already did. So now we're back to default. I'm selected onto cell B2, and I'm just going to hit freeze panes. And now everything above and to the left of cell B2 has been frozen. Our next topic is paste special. So we already reviewed a couple different ways we could get there. Up on the Home tab under Paste, and there's a bunch of quick paste options with icons, formulas and formatting, transpose. I usually go to the menu because I want to see all the options. Sometimes I'll pick multiples. It really depends on the analysis I'm working on. And then, in my opinion, it's always faster just to right click and go to paste special. So we're going to go over 4 different ways to do this. So first, we're just going to paste special values. The only thing we want we're going to highlight cell E6. For some reason the cursor is not showing there, but I'm highlighted on cell E6, which is summing cells B5 and B6. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to right click onto cell F5, hit paste special, and I want the values only. And you can see the 130 was copied over. So one thing real quick to mention, in this workbook, any formulas that we do, if we paste in the correct formula or the correct answer, it's going to highlight green with green lettering, and then it's going to tell you great job. So this way you know if you've done the activity correctly. So this workbook is good because you can go back to it later on, revisit certain topics whenever you need to. So the second thing is pasting special just the formulas. So this can be pretty good when you have multiple years, multiple rows of elements, and you want to do the same analysis somewhere else. We're just going to paste the formula. So we're going to select E12, a copy, paste special. You can go either to formulas here. Let's go to the menu. I don't memorize all the icons, so I always come to the menu, but you could learn some of the icons and do this much faster. And I'm going to select formulas. And so the formula in E12 was summing up B12 and B13. And now I copied it to the right. So we're summing up cells C12 and C13. The 2018 values instead of 2017. So pasting special formats. I'm going to copy, paste special, come to formats, hit OK. And the only thing that changed was the green background and green lettering. Same thing can be done for comments. I'm going to copy, paste special, click on comments, hit OK. And you can see my comment of test has now been copied over. There's also some other fun ways to get to paste special. I think they take more time, so I generally don't use them. You can hit Control-Alt-V, or you can use the Alt menu, Alt-E and S. But for me, just right-clicking and hitting paste special, you can't beat it in terms of speed. Our next topic is sorting and filtering. First, we're going to sort some data. We're going to highlight a column, column C, and under Data and Sort and Filter, there are some quick keys to sort A to Z, lowest to highest, or Z to A, highest to lowest. So we're just going to select Z to A and reverse what we've got sorted already. And so Excel is going to give you a sort warning, and this is very important. You can either expand the selection, and when you sort column C, all the other applicable data will go with it, which is what we want to have here, or you can continue with only the current selection. Now, if I continue with only the current selection, I've now changed all the countries around, but I didn't change the athletes, the age, the year, all that stuff. So now my data set is incorrect. I'm going to hit Control-Z to undo, and we're going to do another sort. This time we're going to expand the selection, and Excel will take all the other information with it. So now I've sorted countries starting with the letter Z first, and now the appropriate athlete name, age, year, etc. has also come with it. So I can sort with a correct data set. Okay, filtering. Select any cell in the top row. We're going to go up to Data and Filter. This one is super common. It's going to put an arrow in every one of the headings. And if you click there, all the information in the column is then categorized for you. So let's say we wanted to only look at data in 2012. We're going to hit Select All to uncheck everything. You could select it to check or uncheck. We're going to only select 2012. And Excel filters everything so that all you're seeing is everything in the year 2012 here. You can do multiple filters. We're going to go to Sport. We're just going to say Archery. So here are all the athletes in 2012 who are doing archery and earned a medal. So it's a quick visual way you can narrow down your data sets for some analysis. If you want to go back to normal, you could undo your filters manually, or you could just hit the filter button again and it'll return the sheet back to its default setting. And so you can mess around with looking at different categories, different small specific ways to look at your data. Our next topic is working with some formulas for naming conventions, or ways to show names and basically your proper cases. So you can use proper, upper, or lower for a formula. If we click on cell B2, you can see that we took a completely capitalized name, all the letters are capital, and we use the formula proper. And what it does is it takes a name and it puts the proper capitalization there. First name, last name, and middle initial are the only ones that are left capitalized. If we use lower, it lowercases every letter. Upper, it uppercases everything. So you can try them out. So here we'll just use my name here, and we're going to change it to the proper case. So we're going to hit equals, proper, open parentheses. And you notice as you type in a formula, Excel will bring it up. Excel will tell you what other elements of the formula need to be filled in for it to work correctly. So basically, for proper, all we need to do is say, or tell Excel which text do we want to use proper for. So we're going to manually select my name. Excel enters it in as cell A7. You can either hit enter, Excel will fill in the close parentheses for you, or you can fill it in yourself. So I'm just going to hit close parentheses. So now my formula is ready to run. Hit enter. And first name and last name has been capitalized. Our next topic is using AutoSum functions. So this can be a very fast way to quickly add something, average, count, and min and max. So these are kind of preloaded formulas that Excel can recognize, and you can quickly apply them to data sets for some quick analysis. So we're going to start out using column D, the flying hours, and we're going to sum them. So we could use the sum formula and just type in equals sum and highlight the range of cells we want to add. A quick way we can also do this, so we can go up to the Home tab and use AutoSum. And we want to click on the cell where we want the sum to happen. So all the way up to the right, under the editing box, you can hit auto sum, auto average, count, max, and min. There are more functions here too. We're just going to talk about this basic list just to show the functionality. So I'm going to click sum, and it automatically sums all the data above me. So for this one, we can just hit enter, and it's going to sum everything. So as I mentioned before, our answer highlights green with green background, says great job, so we know we did this one correctly. So now we're going to do average hours. We're going to click up to AutoSum, click average, and now notice that Excel automatically goes above the cell you're highlighted on for the amount of data that's in adjacent cells. So there's a space here in between the sum we just did and the data we actually want to average. So we do need to click into the data set. I'm going to left click and hold, and I'm going to highlight everything we want to average. Hit enter, and we got the correct 15,942 hours. We're going to do the same thing for count. Select AutoSum, the drop down, count numbers, and that automatically summed above. So I think I hit the wrong thing here. So I'm going to re-hit it to do count. It's going to highlight everything above me. But what I really want is this data set of flying hours. So here's another thing for hotkeys that may help you. So instead of manually clicking and highlighting the range, what I like to do is just click anywhere in the data set, either at the very top or the very bottom, and I'll hit Control Shift and the up arrow. And that automatically highlights everything above me. And then if I just hold Shift and hit down, I can then adjust how much of the data I want to go ahead and highlight. So I'm going to adjust it to the flying hours, hit enter, and I've counted 24 different data points. So for max, AutoSum max, we're going to click up the top this time. I'm going to hit Control Shift down and enter. And for the last one, we're going to go back to, for the min, we're just going to manually select it. So left mouse click, hold it, and drag your selection. So auto-summing can be used pretty quickly rather than, for simple functions, it's much faster than hand typing in the formula. For most larger formulas, larger data sets, or when you're nesting a formula, which means put a formula inside of a formula, usually you're just going to write it out. But there are some ways AutoSum can save you some time. All right, next topic, we're going to go to nested formulas. Like I just said, it's when you put a formula inside of another, so you can do multiple actions within one cell. So this can be pretty powerful, especially with large data sets, and if you have a specific analysis or answer you're trying to get to. So this sheet is pre-populated using the left, mid, and right formulas. So we'll go through those real quick. So in the example, we have an example fund here, BSN number. I just took this from somewhere. I don't know what these mean. It's just nominal data, but we can pull the leftmost characters using the left formula, and it looks like we want the 4 on the left. So what we did is we hit equals left. If you click up here into the formula bar, Excel will highlight which cells were referenced. So basically we're taking equals left A5, we're taking this fund number, and we want the 4 characters that are all the way to the left. So equals left A5, 4 characters. Mid is roughly the same idea, except you're referencing your cell A5, and then the next point you want, we're actually going to click on mid here, and then Excel will pull up all the different elements you have to input in the formula. So A5 is the text you're referencing, that's the fund. The starting number means which character do you want to start with. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it starts with the character of 1, the 5th character. Then the last argument you enter is how many characters do you want. So we wanted 2, starting with the 5th character over. So you can imagine with extremely large data sets, you're not going to want to sit there and count each one. So the point of what we're doing here is we're going to nest a formula inside another, and then you can quickly pull out data that way. Right's pretty straightforward. It's the same thing as using the left formula, except you're pulling text from the other side. Okay. So we want to pull out the fund type, which is the 3rd character from the right, but we only want the letter. So we want to pull out the letter D from this fund here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to isolate a string of letters where the letter D resides. So here I want to take the rightmost 3 letters and just isolate those. So I'm going to do equals right. I'm going to click on the text I want to work with, hit comma, and you can see Excel, as I'm entering each element, Excel is telling me what I need to do next, which is helpful. So now I want the number of characters. Well, I want to isolate the 3 characters to the right. So I'm going to hit 3, close the parentheses, and hit enter. So now I have D17. So now I'm working with 3 characters instead of this whole long string. So equals right A53, this whole section gets you D17. So think of this as D17. So now what do we want to do? We want to take the leftmost one character from the string. So we want to use the left formula. So what we're going to do is type in left, open parentheses, and right A53 we already know is the rightmost 3 characters. So we're referencing the text we want, right A53, which gives you D17. And then from there, we want the leftmost, how many? 1 characters. So we've now put a formula, the right, inside of the formula left. And it pulls out the letter by itself. So we're basically saying equals left D17, the 1 character to the left. And as I showed you in the beginning, if you highlight the cursor on the bottom right of the cell and you double click, copies your formula down. So you really only need to enter it once, and you can apply this to all of your rows. And so we completed the exercise, and it says great job, highlights green. Okay, cell references. This one is very, very important. For copying cells that have formulas, you want to make sure that your references are accurate. So what we're doing here in cell D3 is we're taking our 2015 hours and we're multiplying by the labor rate to calculate our cost, $225,000. Now, if I were to copy this formula, I can either just hit Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, and it copies everything in the cell, not just the formula, not just the answer here. Your references move 1 cell to the right because we're a relative reference. We started out with just the cell D2 and A2. As I copied to the right, everything referenced moves 1 cell to the right. So now I'm taking the 2016 hours, and I'm not multiplying by the labor rate because that moved. So here, a relative reference is not appropriate. So what we do is we turn it into a mixed reference or an absolute reference. To do that, we put a $ in front of the column or the row that we're referencing, and that essentially locks that column or that row. And to quickly add the $, you can come up to the formula bar, click onto whichever reference you want. So we want 2015 hours, and when we move to the right, we want that to move as well so that we reference the correct year. So we're not going to do anything to D2. We want to leave that as a relative reference. A2, however, as we copy to the right, we don't want that to move. So what I want to do is I want to lock the reference into column A so that as I copy to the right, this reference is locked into column A. So what I need to do is put in a $ before A2. So you can enter that in manually, or hit enter, or you can select on your reference. You can hit the F4 key, which will automatically put $ before the column and the row. And if you hit F4 again, it'll lock the row. A third time, it'll lock the column. A fourth time, it takes them off. So remember, the F4 key can change your cell references. So I'm just going to hit F4 once here, locks the column and the row. As I do that and copy my formula, you know what, I'm just going to highlight the cell and I'm just going to left click, hold it, drag to the right, and that copies the formula. And as we test out cell H3, we're taking H2, the hours. So as we copied to the right, the hours was a relative reference, so that copies as well. But then we locked cell A2 for the labor rate. So we're multiplying the correct labor rate times the correct years. What I could have done, so I'm going to cycle that off. What I could have done is select my reference of A2. I could have hit F4 3 times, and that all that does is it locks the column. Because we're only copying to the right, the only thing we need to worry about is the reference staying in column A. So whether I lock both or just the column A, doesn't really matter. When I copy this over, the references will be accurate, and I'm multiplying the correct years, hours versus times the labor rate. So this can quickly enable you to copy analysis or your formulas throughout a sheet, up and down, and you only have to really essentially write the formula one time. So in cell C11, by multiplying 2015 hours times the 2015 rate times the employee 1 hours, B11 times C10. So as I copy to the right, I want my hours reference to copy over with it. So I'm not going to lock column C for this reference. As I copy to the right, I do want this to stay and I don't want it to come with me. So I'm going to take the B11 reference and I want to lock column B. So I'm going to hit F4 3 times, $ in front of column B, and that locks column B. So as I copy to the right, this won't move. This reference won't move with it. But when I do copy down from row 11 to 12, I do want this to move and come with me. So I'm not going to lock in front of row 11. So for this reference, we don't want to lock column C. We want the hours to move with us as we copy to the right, but we don't want this reference to move when we copy down to the other rows. So I do want to lock row 10. So I'll hit F4 twice, I'll lock row 10, and I will drag this formula to the right, and then I'll drag it down, and it looks like we did a great job. So I'm going to spot check the very last column and last row formula to make sure that we did that right. So our reference for hours, we did not lock. We did lock row 10, but we didn't lock the column. So that means the hours could move along this row. We did lock column B for the other reference, but we didn't lock the row. So we stayed within this column here. So it does take a while to kind of do this off the top of your head. So just remember, you want to look for the reference you're working with. Do you want it to move along the column or the row? And if you don't want it to, you need to lock that specific direction. And so I would do it step by step until you master this. But being able to write your formulas and then copy it throughout a large data set and do your references accurate, you can do thousands of lines or cells of analysis in a very short amount of time by only writing your formula once. So that concludes part 1. Thanks for hanging with us, and please click down to the link below for part 2, or go to the FZCR YouTube channel and you can find part 2 there. Thank you.